After Ronnie James Dio died, what did the FBI really find in his home? Fans thought they knew the famous heavy metal singer for years, but when his personal papers, private records, and hidden belongings were found, they showed a side of him that almost no one saw coming. From small acts of kindness to letters, records, and events from his life that were only recently found. These new facts change how many people remember one of rock's best voices. What made them stand out so much? A dreamer from a small town. His birthday is July 10, 1942, and he was born in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Patrick and Anna Padavona were his parents. They were Italian-American and their family came from Cortland, New York. The family name used to be Padavano, but it was changed by accident when his grandfather came to the U.S. through Ellis Island. The family only lived in Portsmouth for a short time because Ronald's father was in the U.S. Army during the Second World War. They then moved back to Cortland, where Ronald spent most of his childhood. No one could have known at the time that this young boy would grow up to have one of the best sounds in rock and heavy metal history. Ronald has loved music since he was very young. His dad thought that learning to play an instrument would help him be more responsible and boost his confidence, so he pushed him to start studying music early. Ronald started taking formal trumpet lessons when he was only 5 years old. He also learned to play the French horn, which he did very well at right away. Early musical training helped him learn how to control his breathing very well, which is one of the main reasons for his strong and powerful singing voice. He was well known as a singer, but he always thought that playing the trumpet taught him everything he needed to know about how to sing. Ronald liked a lot of different types of music when he was growing up in Cortland. The well-known American singer Mario Lanza was a big influence on him. He also liked opera, and the strong style of it changed the way he sang for a long time. He liked to read romantic fiction stories when he wasn't playing music. His favorites were Sir Walter Scott's books and the stories of King Arthur. For a lot of his free time, he also read science fiction and played sports. These things helped him develop his imagination and later gave rise to many of the magical and mythical themes that ran through his music. Ronald found that he loved playing music with other people when he was in high school. The Vegas Kings was the name of his first rock and roll band. The band's name changed over time, first to Ronnie and the Rumblers, and then to Ronnie and the Red Caps. In the beginning, he mostly played the trumpet, but soon he also sang and played the bass guitar. He felt more and more comfortable on stage, and it was clear that this wasn't just a hobby for him. It was going to be his life. Ronald went to the State University of New York at Buffalo for a short time after graduating from Cortland High School in 1960. He went to school for pharmacology and played trumpet in the college concert band. That being said, music was still a lot more fun than school. He only stayed there for a year before he moved on. He later started at Cortland State College but also chose not to continue his studies. In a later interview, he said that he had taken English classes along with history classes. He tried to study other things, but singing was always what he wanted to do. A lot of people thought that someone with such a strong voice must have taken lessons from a professional. But Ronald often said that he had never taken an official singing class. Instead, he used the ways of breathing that he had learned while learning to play the trumpet. This out-of-the-ordinary road helped him develop the clear, strong, and memorable voice that made him famous all over the world. What did they find when they went to Dio's house? Let's get started. The secret side of Dio. As Ronnie James Dio's career grew, a lot of people thought that the scary images, magical themes, and strange symbols in his music were just part of his stage shows. On the other hand, papers found in his personal things after he died showed a different story. These things proved that his love of mythology, faith, and old beliefs was real, and had been a part of his life for a long time. The purpose of these papers wasn't to get attention, but to encourage careful study. He wrote in his journals that he had spent decades gathering books about various faiths, myths from the past, symbols from the Middle Ages, and traditional beliefs. He began putting together this collection in the 1960s, a long time before these themes became important to his music. One of his favorite things to do was read, and he loved learning about how people from different cultures thought about life, evil, and the unknown. He wasn't just interested in one religion or belief. Instead, he looked into a lot of different ideas, trying to find the stories and symbols that linked people from different times and places. One of the rare books in his collection was a copy from the 1600s of the Lesser Key of Solomon, an old book about demonology and ceremonial magic. He had carefully read and thought about the book for many years, as shown by the notes he wrote in the margins. He didn't seem to be reading it for fun. Instead, he seemed to be looking into its past, language, and symbols in great depth. People who wrote these comments by hand were thoughtful and wanted to know what old traditions meant instead of just taking them at face value. Some other papers found in his estate showed that Dio often wrote letters to well-known experts. In his letters, he talked with an anthropologist who studied ritual practices and a professor of religious studies at the University of California, Los Angeles. Their letters were mostly about religious traditions, myths, symbols, and the part that rituals have played in the history of people. These talks showed that Dio was genuinely interested in these topics and was eager to learn more about them. He was interested in why people from different cultures use stories, traditions, and signs to make sense of the world. Years before he became one of the best heavy metal singers, Dio started out in local rock and roll bands. Ronnie and the Redcaps was one of his first bands, and it was there that he learned how to play music and act. His songs got heavier and stronger over the years. After that, he joined the band Elf, where his strong voice and growing confidence made a lot of rock stars take notice. His work with Elf showed that he had the skills to do well on a much bigger stage. In 1975, Ritchie Blackmore, the guitarist for Deep Purple, asked Dio to help him make a new band called Rainbow. This was a big turning point. The partnership made strong rock music with classical elements, fantasy themes, and dramatic lyrics. The band had a unique sound because of Dio's amazing voice, and his love of mythology gave the songs more depth. They made unique music together that wasn't made by many other rock bands at the time. Rainbow quickly became famous for mixing heavy music with creative stories. They helped shape the future of heavy metal. Fans didn't know how complicated Dio's friendship with Blackmore was until letters from the two were found in his estate. Their letters showed that they admired each other's skills, but they often had different ideas about how the band should sound. When Dio wrote a letter in 1977, he talked about how he thought mystical themes should have real meaning instead of just looking good. Blackmore's draft responses showed that he was getting more and more angry because he thought Dio sometimes behaved as if he was the only one who knew what the band's music was meant to do artistically. These arguments showed that these two talented musicians had different creative ideas, despite the fact that they worked together to make catchy songs. Rainbow made Dio famous all over the world, but he really started to shine when he joined Black Sabbath in 1979. People thought it would be very hard to replace Ozzy Osbourne as lead singer of Ozzy Osbourne because he had become so connected with the band's identity. Dio took on the task and helped lead the group into a new era of success. New sounds came out on albums like Heaven and Hell and Mob Rules, but the band's fans still loved their strong style. His dramatic singing and creative lyrics gave Black Sabbath new life, and people all over the world praised them. During this time, Dio also became closely linked to the famous hand gesture of devil horns. He said that the sign was something his Italian grandma had taught him to keep away from bad luck. Over time, the move became one of the most recognizable heavy metal images, connecting fans from all over the world across language and culture. But this wasn't all that the estate told us. Don't leave yet because what's coming next will shock you. These letters are hidden. Another thing that Ronnie James Dio had was a legal pad that was full of thorough notes about the songs on Heaven and Hell. The pages showed how well he kept track of his writing. He wrote down the amount of work he thought he had put into each song. Besides Children of the Sea, he said that he wrote about 85% of the song. He thought he had come up with the whole vocal melody, written all the lyrics, and even told Tony Iommi about the chord progression. Notes like these were next to Die Young and the title track Heaven and Hell. It was clear that Dio wanted a clear record of the ideas he thought he had brought to the band. His personal journal also showed that Black Sabbath was not always a peaceful place to be. He wrote that there were a lot of fights in the studio while Mob Rules was being recorded. One entry talked about another hard day he had trying to get credit for his work. He thought that Geezer Butler and Tony Iommi still saw him as Ozzy Osbourne's replacement as the lead singer and not as an equal part of the band. Based on his notes, he thought that some of his ideas were taken into account while they were being recorded, but were later presented as if they had come from someone else. His growing disappointment as he struggled to get the credit he thought he deserved was written in his diary. In another entry, he wrote about what he thought was one of the worst things that had ever happened to him professionally. In late 1981, he wrote that he had found proof of a secret meeting between Tony Iommi and Sharon Arden, who at the time was Ozzy Osbourne's manager and later married him. Dio talked to Iommi after finding out about the meeting, according to his diary. He thought that while Mob Rules was still being recorded, they had talked about whether bringing Ozzy Osbourne back to Black Sabbath would be better for business. What he thought was going on behind the scenes hurt him a lot, as his diary showed. Following a good start for the band, he thought that someone else was already being considered to take his place. In 1982, Dio quit Black Sabbath to make his own way in the world. He made a new band and used his stage name, Dio, for it. It quickly became one of the best heavy metal bands around. Some of his best-known albums as a solo artist are Holy Diver and The Last in Line. People all over the world were devoted to him because of his strong singing, catchy songs, and thrilling performances. He didn't think about the past. Instead, he worked on making music that showed his own ideas and artistic vision. The band's performances became famous for the amazing shows they put on. Each performance was an unforgettable experience thanks to the huge dragons, bright lasers, and magical sets. The fantasy themes in Dio's songs went well with these visual effects, which helped make a world that people could get lost in for a while. His shows were known for mixing powerful music with imaginative stories that made each show feel like it was bigger than life. One of the most surprising things found in Dio's house was a secret room that led to his own recording studio. His journals say that he called this private area his sanctuary. The room was full of things that had been collected from all over the world. They had Ankh symbols from ancient Egypt, grimoires from the Middle Ages, ceremonial daggers from different religions, and stones that had been carefully set up in certain shapes. The collection showed how his lifelong interest in mythology, history, symbols, and old ideas had shaped his music for a long time. In his papers, there was also a set of letters he had written to Jimmy Page of Led Zeppelin, who was also a musician known for being interested in spiritual things. The letters, which were written from 1979 to 2003, show that the two artists were friends for a long time, because they were both interested in history, symbols, and old writings. In their letters, they talked about interesting ideas and books they had both read. From their letters, it seemed like their relationship was more than just music. They both wanted to know more about old traditions and information that had been lost. These private papers gave us a unique look into Dio's mind, how he came up with his music, and the personal events that shaped one of heavy metal's most famous careers. The financial records. The financial records that were found in Ronnie James Dio's estate gave a much more in-depth look into his business life. People in the heavy metal scene knew him as one of the nicest and most respected people in the business. Private papers, on the other hand, showed that he ran his business with great care and strict control. He made choices based on deals and contracts instead of how he felt. The records showed that the man kept his business and friendship separate, even when it was hard to do so. A look at the contracts that Dio's solo band members signed showed that most of them worked as workers instead of employers. They had a hand in making the songs and performances what they were, but they didn't get much money from royalties in the future. Instead of getting a share of the songs they helped make, they mostly got salaries and agreed-upon payments. The papers showed that Dio wanted to be in charge of all of his music and business, making sure that he kept ownership throughout his career. Some of the most moving things that were found were letters that Dio sent to former band members who had been kicked out of the group. Several musicians talked about how hard it was for them to pay their bills after losing their jobs. One said that he was almost broke, but songs that he had helped perform were still making a lot of money. When answers were sent, they were polite but firm. The letters made it clear that Dio thought the contracts that were signed took care of all the issues. Even when the requests were sincere, he wouldn't give extra money beyond what was agreed upon in court. The singer's estate also found personal journals that showed a different side of him. In the late 1990s, when heavy metal wasn't as popular as it used to be, Dio wrote about how worried he was about the future. Apparently, he thought that younger people liked louder music with less story and melody. He knew these changes were happening, but he wasn't going to change his style to fit in with the crowd. He was still proud of the music he made, but he secretly wondered if people would remember it years from now. That even a famous artist had these private thoughts showed that they were afraid of being forgotten. His fear seemed to lead to another amazing find that was hidden in his personal papers. A fantasy book called The Kingdom of the Crystal Dawn that was almost finished was found. The manuscript was written by hand and had more than 700 pages. It had been carefully edited over many years. It gave people a lot more access to the magical worlds they had only quickly seen through his song lyrics. There were full histories for many kingdoms and creatures on the pages, along with detailed maps and drawings of important characters. Notes on the manuscript showed that Dio had worked on the project behind closed doors for over 15 years. He wanted to leave behind something meaningful besides music. Medical records and letters written before he was diagnosed with stomach cancer led to one of the saddest finds. According to these papers, Dio had been having scary health issues for almost 2 years before he went to the doctor for help. At first, he thought the pain was just normal stomach issues and thought it would go away on its own. He told his wife Wendy about many of his symptoms in letters, but he didn't tell anyone else because he was afraid that a serious diagnosis would mean he had to cancel concerts. He didn't want to let down the people who had been there for him for a long time. When doctors told him he had stomach cancer in 2009, it was already very far along. His medical records showed that getting care sooner might have made his prospects better. His specialist was worried about the delay, and Dio's diaries showed that he felt bad about it. He later admitted that touring was more important to him than his health, and that he wished he had gotten help sooner. There were also a lot of letters in the estate from younger heavy metal musicians who looked to Dio for help and support. These messages showed that he quietly helped many up-and-coming artists who looked up to his work. In a long conversation with Metallica singer James Hetfield, I got a lot of useful information about how to sing better and keep my voice healthy during long concert tours. Another surprising set of letters showed that he was friends with Iron Maiden singer Bruce Dickinson much more than most fans knew. They talked about singing techniques, songwriting ideas, stage performances, and how hard it is to combine dramatic live shows with powerful singing. These private papers showed a skilled artist whose impact went far beyond the music heard on stage. So, how did he spend his last days? Let's find out. Ronnie James Dio's kindness. After Ronnie James Dio died, one of the most surprising things found had nothing to do with his music. He had been kind to people for a long time without expecting anything in return. It was found in his financial records that he had secretly given large amounts of money to cancer research groups, children's charities, and music education programs for poor youth. Because he didn't want anyone to know the money came from him, he made sure that no one knew who gave it. He thought that helping other people should never be done to get attention or praise. The people who managed his money had clear instructions in his financial records. They were told that these donations should never be talked about in public. One note just said that the gifts weren't meant to get attention and that no one should know where the money came from. He really thought that people should give from the heart instead of just to get respect. A lot of people were shocked to learn how much good he had done for other people after he died. It was also amazing to find out that Dio had been funding a music grant program since the mid-1980s. The program gave young people from poor families the chance to study music, which was their dream. Over many years, his help made it possible for many kids to go to music schools. They didn't know who had paid for their schooling. They were just given the chance to improve their lives, learn, and grow. Dio never asked to meet them or get credit for making their lives better. His personal papers also showed something that a lot of his fans didn't expect. They showed that he and Tony Iommi were at peace with each other more deeply and personally before Dio died. During the Heaven and Hell project in the early 2000s, they got along well again at work, and the letters from his last months showed that they had also healed old emotional scars. Even though they had fought in the past, their relationship had grown stronger. He wrote one letter in the last few months of his life that showed how much his ideas had changed. He said that old arguments didn't seem important anymore because of time. He no longer cared about disagreements about business, contracts, and credit. The songs they made together and the memories they shared were all that was left. He told them how thankful he was for everything they had done together as friends and musicians. Wisdom, forgiveness, and respect had grown stronger over time, and the letter showed that. An unfinished message he had planned to leave for his fans was among his last papers. He talked about his long career and what his music had always meant in it. He said he never wrote songs about evil because he didn't want people to be afraid of it or happy about it. Instead, he wanted people to know that they could face darkness with bravery. In his songs, the monsters, dragons, and devils stood for the problems people have in real life. He hoped that his music would show people that with strength and hope, they could win even the hardest battles. Dio told the world in late 2009 that he had been diagnosed with stomach cancer. He began getting care at the Houston, Texas, MD Anderson Cancer Center. Despite having a very dangerous illness, he was grateful for the help of his family, friends, and fans. As his health got worse, Heaven and Hell said in the spring of 2010 that they would not be playing any shows this summer. In Atlantic City, New Jersey, at the end of August 2009, he played his last live show. Ronnie James Dio died on May 16, 2010, after a long fight with cancer. When artists around the world heard the news of his death, they sent him lots of love. A lot of artists talked about how much he changed their lives and careers. Metal Hammer's Lars Ulrich thanked Dio for inspiring him with his beautiful voice, music, and kindness. Corey Taylor of Slipknot remembers him as a performer who was completely honest and happy. Killswitch Engage members who recorded their own version of Holy Diver said that he was a real musician whose skill and character would continue to inspire people in the future. There was a public service for the dead at the Hall of Liberty in Los Angeles' Forest Lawn, Hollywood Hills. The building quickly filled up with fans, family, friends, and other artists who wanted to remember him. A lot more people gathered outside, where they could all watch the ceremony together on big screens. The large crowd showed how Ronnie James Dio's music, giving and quiet acts of kindness that were kept secret until after his death had left a lasting mark. What Ronnie James Dio left behind. After Ronnie James Dio died in 2010, his longtime manager and widow, Wendy Dio, took care of his estate and kept everything he left behind safe. She carefully chose over the years what personal papers, recordings, and other things could be made public. When people asked her about the things that were found in his things, she said that Ronnie was a lot more complicated than most people thought. She also said that some of the things that were said about him didn't quite fit the man she had known for a long time. Wendy said that Ronnie was naturally private and had a lot of interests that most of his fans never saw. Many people knew him as the man with the loud voice who stood in front of the cameras, but they didn't know the other side of him. Still, she thought that the most important thing about him never changed. The man who walked over to the stage was the same man who left it. He loved music very much, was honest with himself, and was very loyal to the people who helped him throughout his career. Some of the music Ronnie made with Black Sabbath had writing credits that were called into question as well. When asked about it, guitarist Tony Iommi gave a very respectful answer. He said that Ronnie was a great singer and songwriter, and that his joining the band at a special time in its history gave it new life. He also said that most of the time, more than one person works together to make songs. Every member of the studio team brings something new to the table, and people may remember those times of creativity in different ways. He thought the most important thing was that they worked together to make songs that have moved people for many years. The things that were found in Dio's estate also made music experts and historians look at his impact on heavy metal again. For a long time, his voice, stage presence, and performances were the main things that people liked about him. But the papers and notes that were found after he died showed that his work was about a lot more than most people thought. His way of writing songs showed that he planned them carefully, gave them a lot of thought, and really wanted to make stories instead of just writing songs. Scientists found that Ronnie carefully made up the worlds in his songs. His fantasy pictures of castles, dragons, heroes, and other strange animals helped to show deeper ideas about bravery, hope, struggle, and strength. This creative approach helped his music stay meaningful and connect with people for many years. A person who knows a lot about music said that Ronnie was doing a lot more than just singing heavy metal songs. He was part of the process of making a whole style of art that combined music, stories, imagination, and symbols into a powerful whole. Many artists who came after him used this style, which changed the way heavy metal continued to grow. His work inspired musicians to make music that was more than just words on a page. Instead, they made whole worlds that people could enter through music. Fans got to hear music they had never heard before, which was one of the most exciting things that came out of these finds. It was Ronnie Dio's careful oversight that demo recordings found in Ronnie's personal collection were fixed up and remastered. In the end, these tapes came out as Dio, The Early Years and Rainbow to Sabbath, the transition tapes. People who bought the collections could hear early versions of songs and ideas that would become part of his famous career. They also gave people a rare chance to see how his music slowly grew from simple ideas to finished recordings. For fans who have been following Ronnie's work for a while, these releases made their relationship with it even stronger. Hearing the early recordings helped them understand how much work, creativity, and thought went into each song. A lot of people who heard his music realized that the fantasy worlds he created were more than just fun stage ideas after these discoveries. They showed the beliefs and values that were most important to him all his life. Knowing this gave well-known songs a deeper meaning and helped fans enjoy them in a whole new way. If you like this video, please click the next button and like. If you like the video.